Confidence. I'm delighted to welcome Maureen McCowan to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, Maureen.
Hi, Alec. Thanks for inviting me. Delighted to be here to chat with you.
Yeah, delighted to have you. Fantastic. Well, as you know, the format here is I'm going to take you back to your last days of school. And school seems to be a theme running with you, but we'll just explore that in a few minutes. Tell me, were you the sort of academic or were you the person who wanted to travel or hadn't a clue where you were going?
Oh, I knew where I was going from a very early age, because from the time that I was very young, 5 or 6 years of age, I had all of my dolls and teddies lined up on the bed. I had my easel blackboard and I was teaching them. So teaching was all that I wanted to do. I had very briefly wavered to thinking about becoming a librarian because I loved reading, but then went back to teaching, and that was all that I wanted to do. And in school, yeah, I was quiet. I was the nerd. I always had the homework done. I never mitched a class. I was one of those kids. Yeah.
Mhm. All right. There will people resonate with that, and there will people go, "Oh, I wish I was that person." But I'm gathering you're telling me you had the best educated toys in the area.
I did. That's for sure. Yeah. And they made sure they always had their homework done as well. So it was all good.
I suppose you gave out lines to them and things like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you do what it takes.
Great. It sounds interesting. Fantastic. So obviously you're going to pursue this career. I presume that means going to college.
So going to college. So at the time when I was doing my leaving cert, I wanted to become a primary school teacher, and you had a music exam and an Irish interview as part of the process that stage. And one of those let me down. I'm guessing it was the music. I'm not very musically inclined. So plan B then was to go to university. I went to Galway. UCG as it was at the time, studied arts and got my degree in Irish and French, and from there went on, did the HDIP to become a teacher at that stage. So I was
Okay,
on my way.
so that's well, that's about 4 years of your life just to kick off, just to
Mhm.
get you into that place. Tell me, what drew you into the world of teaching? I mean, you talk about from your childhood, but what was it that sort of gave you the passion?
Yeah, interesting. I think about, probably there was an inspirational teacher that I had in primary school, and he was the school principal, but he also taught. And he was one of those teachers who just instilled this love of learning and always encouraged us and did everything he could to try to make things as good as possible in a learning environment. And one of the things, even as sixth class students, he used to take the last 15 minutes of the day and
Right.
read to us from a novel.
Oh,
And it was just fabulous, because it was a lovely way to unwind and relax at the end of the day. And I remember one he had, The Silent People by Walter Macken. I've read it a couple of times since, and he just, it was about the famine, and he just read it. And one of the interesting things from that was that he skipped pages, and of course when he skipped pieces, that created that mystery. So I was dying to get my hands on it to see what was the bits that he skipped. So yeah, I think that probably, we get inspired by different people, and he was somebody who inspired me, definitely.
That's quite interesting because I think a lot of people really will resonate with that, as well as those who will think, my goodness, my teachers were awful. And it's a terrible shame that education is decided on perhaps the personality and passion a particular person has.
That is for sure. And I think for teaching, having spent many years in it, people say about the holidays being great and having 3 months off is great, but that's not enough to drive you to want to be teaching. You really have to have that love of learning and love of instilling knowledge in others and wanting to bring out the best in others. And that's something that I have, and that has carried through to what I'm doing today.
I suppose you were back at a time where languages were very much focused on grammar as opposed to sort of conversational language.
Mm.
How did you manage that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. My subjects were Irish and French, and in Ireland a lot of people have had negative experience through school themselves of Irish, and it can be really challenging to overcome that mindset, first of all, in students. Currently, the Leaving Cert Irish has 40% going for their oral Irish exam. It's the best thing ever, and it's a pity that there isn't an oral component to the junior cycle as well, because
Sure.
language is about communication. It's about speaking to people. It's not about reading at basic level, not about reading novels and reading poems and so on. That can come later. but
Sure.
essentially it is about that being able to communicate. I learn Duolingo. I have the Duolingo app on my phone, and I spend a couple of minutes each day doing Spanish.
All
We
right.
go to holidays to Spain, and I like to be able to just be able to have a bit more of a conversation than ordering a glass of wine or my meal in Spanish. But it is that idea of communicating and getting your message across, and whether that is saying, asking for directions,
Sure.
having to do pointing, having to whatever, it is all about that communication. And that hang up on grammar can turn us off. We're afraid to say it wrong, we're afraid to make a mistake, and it hinders the communication ultimately from that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose what's happening there is you're able to converse quite well with people, as you said, through gesticulation and throwing words in,
Mhm.
whereas you could have three phrases perfectly worked out but are useless.
Exactly. And if you're able to ask the question perfectly, but then you don't understand the answer, then it comes to another situation. But
It
yes.
it certainly does. Okay, so you had all of that. You were going to take up a teaching post. Tell us about that and how it worked out for you.
Yeah, so when I first left college, I went to France for a year. I was working there teaching English. Then I came back and I taught in a number of schools. So I've taught mixed, taught girls only, and taught boys only. So you got your variations on each of those. And um, a career that I loved, absolutely loved. I mean, the sense of achievement that you get, particularly if you start off and you're teaching a student, you take them in at 12, 13 years of age into your French class, and you
Right.
teach them all the way through to Leaving Cert, and you see what they have achieved and how they're able to communicate at the end of those years with you. There's a phenomenal sense of achievement in that. And one of the best moments that I would enjoy at the end of each school year was in preparation for the oral exams, the Leaving
Right.
Certs. And I would have them almost like speed dating, standing up opposite each other, and they would have their topics that they're going to talk about. And there's that buzz of conversation in Irish or French around the room. And I'm just walking around, giving little suggestions here and there and just letting them at it. And it's fabulous. That's definitely a real, there is a buzz in that to see what they can do.
And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is Maureen McCowan. Just picking up on the sort of the pleasure you get from teaching
Mm.
and seeing the results from it. That was going to continue on for more years than you care to remember, if I'm not mistaken.
That's for sure. Yeah, it was a long career, and something that I continued to enjoy. But when our youngest son started off in college, it just one of a few different things had happened. A couple of close friends had passed from cancer, and you have these
Sure.
life questioning moments, and is this it type of moments. And I decided to take an opportunity of a career break, and partly was to explore the idea of, do I have any transferable skills? Can I do anything else? Or is teaching what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life? So in teaching, it's fortunate you have that opportunity to take a career break. So I availed of that, and wasn't sure, was I more than wasn't sure. I hadn't a clue what I wanted
Right.
to do. Just that I wanted to have this freedom and this opportunity to try something different. And I went to a career coach. He did personality tests and said, "Are you sure you want to leave teaching? That seems to be where all of your skills lie." And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to try something different." And somebody suggested, "Why not be a corporate trainer?" And I'm like, "What's a corporate trainer?" So Google became my best friend over the next few months as I worked my way through that. I did the professional practice cert in training design delivery with the IITD. Thought that I would work as an associate trainer with one of the training companies, but nobody was interested in talking to me. So it was like,
Right.
okay, well, why don't I see if I can make a go of this myself and set up a
Okay.
business?
Let me just take you back to the decision because I think a lot of people struggle with that whole area.
Mm.
I've got a safe job, pensionable. But what's going through your mind? Is it the fact that you could be living a life of quiet desperation for the rest of it? So what's the motivation and how do you G yourself up to take that jump, that leap of faith?
To take that jump. Yeah, well, I remember in mid-December walking into the staff room one day at lunchtime, and the staff room is your place of refuge. You know, you're spending 40-minute sessions with teenagers, and then you go and you sort of unwind a bit in the staff room at lunchtime. And with the day that I went in, over the years, like in every job, there's become more paperwork, it's become more intense, the teaching work that's there. I went into the staff room and I could see, the male teachers over on the right hand side, and they were talking sport. I was like, oh no, don't want to go and sit and talk. They're listening to that. And then there were the young teachers who were talking about their social lives and so on over on the other side. And I was like, oh no, I'm not in the mood for this now today. So I chose to sit on my own and have my lunch on my own and just
Right.
unwind that way. And as I was standing in the doorway looking and deciding where I was going to sit, it was like, is this it? Is this what I am going to do from now until I retire? And that thought just was like, oh my goodness, no, let's try something different. And that sparked it, a number of different things, but that was the final thing that sparked it. And colleagues, when I said I was going to take the career break, said I was
Right.
very brave.
Yeah.
And brave it's an interesting word to use,
It
but
is.
I didn't think that it was brave, because it was like, well, I have that security net that's there. It's a career break. I'm not cutting all ties, I'm testing something else out, and I can come back if it doesn't work out. And there is a huge luxury in that. And what
Yeah.
I set up and the business that I set up, it wasn't like there was huge financial commitment. I wasn't employing anybody. I wasn't renting premises. I didn't have stock. So it was low level risk for what I was doing, and it was being able to explore that, and having supportive family and friends along the way just made it easier as well.
It's quite interesting when you announce to people who perhaps have resigned themselves to a career for themselves for the rest of their life, they're often the naysayers and those who want to hold you back because if you go off and be successful, it kind of reinforces to them that they should have taken a risk themselves.
Mm. And, I was talking to somebody recently who's teaching in the city centre school that's quite challenging.
Sure.
And I know her for over 10 years, and she has never been happy in her teaching role. Now, I really enjoyed, up until the day that I walked out of the school, I enjoyed teaching, but she has never really been happy in it. I was talking to her recently and she said, we don't all have your courage. And
No.
there is that, better the devil you know type of situation for people. And not everybody is in a position that they are able to take that jump and do what I did. So I am aware of the fact that I was fortunate in having that option.
Well, you can say that, but equally, people will always find reasons why not to.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a barrier there, no matter what it was. So yeah, you were right. You made your decision with that. You had the support around you, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think our listeners need to understand you were leaping into a world of business where A, you had no business skills, B, you had no network, C, you had no clients.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's brave. So tell us about how
Or
you started
stupid.
dealing with those component parts.
Yes, none of that. And like I mentioned, Google became my best friend, because I literally Googled how to be successful in business.
Right.
And networking came up as being, one of these things that you have to do. And like a lot of people, when it comes to networking, I was like, oh God, do I have to? But when you change your mindset and you think networking is actually going out and meeting new people, and in a way, I find it easier, no, not in a way, lots of ways, I find it easier to walk into a networking event than what I would walking into a party. Because
Sure.
in a party, people are there and they're chatting and they've got their closed groups. They're not necessarily interested in meeting new people. You walk into a networking group, people are there to meet new people. So it's a whole different dynamic that's there. So I had to start networking, which I did a lot of, 3 or 4
Sure.
networking events a week, every week, building up that network, building up so that people knew who I was, building up my credibility in what I was doing. So it took a lot of time, and the clients took a lot of time to come along as well. Nobody's just going to suddenly sign up with you. So all of these things take time. And it was, that first year was tough, but you keep
Sure.
going and you sort of look at the progress, and Then of course year two was just starting. I had just got my first corporate client signed. We had 2 half-day trainings in a beautiful hotel all signed up to be on the beginning of April 2020, and we all know what
Yeah.
happened there. So that was like, okay, here we go.
Somebody doesn't like me. Oh,
Yes.
um, one of the things a lot of people find is that networking is one of those. Wow, how do you do that? How do you meet people? So obviously you have a certain level of confidence, but
Mhm.
obviously you Googled networking as well and how to do it.
Yeah. Google networking, how to do it. The first networking event that I went to was with Kildare Chamber,
All right.
and that was in January of 2019. So I hadn't the business officially set up at that stage. It was an idea. It was like, is this something I can do? And when I contacted them beforehand, I was told, you have the opportunity to do your 60-second pitch. And I was like, okay, great, yeah. And then straight off on Google, what's a 60-second pitch? And then discovered it's a mini speech. And
Yeah,
I know how to do speeches, so that's okay. And when I went, my first pitch was telling, this is my background, this is what I'm thinking of doing. In your advice as business owners, am I crazy or is there something in this? And I got huge support from day one on that. And that was one of the things that guided me. But I also quickly realized that when it came to that elevator pitch, that 60-second pitch at networking events, a lot of people really struggled because they
sure.
tried to pack too much information in, or they tried to, it wasn't always clear as to what it was that they were doing. So a lot of the first clients that I got were people who came to me and said, I really like how you do your pitch. Can you help me with mine? So that was how I started off. My first clients came through that, developing it. So developed, and it's still a course that I run a couple of times a year now, the Master Your Pitch course, because people still need help with that and really clarifying, keeping it down and getting that whole idea, yourself, Alec, that less
Sure.
is more.
Oh,
you
yes.
know that's the big part about it. So that would have been the starting point, and word of mouth, giving, sharing lots of tips all of the time so people would see I knew what I was talking about, gradually building things up.
Great. And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is Maureen McCowan. And just picking up on something very important there, obviously the sort of confidence level from your teacher life or teaching
Mhm.
life enabled you to bring that confidence into a sort of networking environment. And I think it's very important, and you recognize that. Also, that your career was also about to move into more teaching, but getting paid more for it.
It was, and not having the homework, not having all of the discipline issues and so on. But just to take up one of the points that you said there, Alec, because a lot of people assume that teachers are confident speakers,
Sure.
and they're confident in their own little world, which is the classroom. But you have a lot of teachers who find it very challenging, whether it is speaking up at a staff meeting or addressing, if they're a year head, addressing a whole, assembly hall full of students, having other peers there when they're addressing them. So that lack of speaking confidence is very prevalent amongst teachers. It's one thing sharing your knowledge to a captive audience of teenagers who
Sure.
are sitting in front of you, but very different in a different situation. So I had been a member of Toastmasters for 11 years
Ah,
and had
yes.
gained skills there that would have helped me in the public speaking side of things. And then from the teaching, because I had the teaching skills, that combining the two of those was a logical next step for me to go to. But what I'm finding is that more and more those skills that I had as a teacher, I'm using them all of the time, whether it is that flexibility. I mentioned COVID there earlier, but
Yes.
we all had to
Hmm.
adapt and change. When you're teaching, and you're teaching like what I was in a boys' school, and you expect to have your class of leaving certs coming in for their higher level French class, and then they walk in and half the class have gone to a match, but they didn't tell you about it beforehand in case you gave them extra work. You have to adapt, you have to be flexible, you have to think, right, what do I do with the people that are in front of me? So that flexibility was ingrained in me for years and years, how to develop and adapt to different learning styles. So lots of skills that were there that you have as teaching. But that whole, if you remember back what I said to you, that buzz that I got from
Sure.
hearing the students, I get that buzz so often now when I'm working with clients, whether it's one-to-one or whether it's in a corporate setting or doing a day's training, and you see the progress that's been made, I'm still getting that buzz. I'm still getting all of the good parts that I loved about teaching,
Sure.
still getting that. I don't have exam preparation. I don't,
No.
each Christmas, my husband says to me, why are you talking again about the Christmas tests? But each Christmas I used to come home with 7 or 8 sets of Christmas tests to correct over the Christmas holidays. And it's all of that other side of things that you don't see. So I don't miss any of that. And I don't miss the holidays because I used to be exhausted coming into the holidays. You push yourself so much in teaching and you're just wiped out. So there's more balance now. And I love the flexibility of being able to manage my own diary and book an afternoon off if I want, or book a day off if I want.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, there's a lot to be said for it, and it's quite interesting. A couple of things you've talked about. One of my bugbears has always been, and it's part of my coaching side of it as well, which is kind of aligned to what you do, is that things like communications in terms of standing up and speaking in front of people are never part of a curriculum. So whether you're in professional service or whether you're, studying to be a teacher, it's not actually part of the curriculum.
Mm.
And so therefore people are thrown into an environment where many of them are not comfortable at all, and they have to either A, suffer it, or B, go and learn the skills, which you obviously were able to do.
Yes, exactly. And that can be challenging itself. I think the new junior cycle that's out now, I haven't taught that. I was gone before that came in, but at least there's oral presentations as part of that. So hopefully the next generation coming through will be more comfortable and confident speaking in front of groups. But it is huge that people don't have those skills, whether it is keeping their message clear and succinct or overcoming the nerves and being able to deal with speaking in front of groups. And that group could be updating the rest of their colleagues in a team presentation, but it can all have that same level of fear that's there. I mean, back to networking, there was
Sure.
a client that I was working with who told me that he used to sleep the night before a networking event because he was so nervous about doing
Wow.
his 60-second pitch.
Hmm.
And on one event on Zoom, he made a mistake. He felt he had messed up his pitch and he felt so embarrassed about it, he just logged out of the meeting. And it
Right.
can
Okay.
have that impact on people. It's huge.
No, it does, and people who don't suffer those sort of nerves often look at others and kind of wonder, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" But we do appreciate, standing in front of people can be quite nervous. But then again, the most likely places I find that people will find themselves thrown into that is something like a wedding, where they're expected to get up and give a short speech, and what you'll find is not rehearsed and mixed with alcohol, and
Yeah.
then we have a car crash on way there.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus, in the run up to it, if somebody's going to be a best man, oh, you'll have to do your speech if you got the speech ready. And that pressure is on all
Sure.
of the time. And that pressure to maybe be humorous if that's not part of what their personality is. And you've got all of these side of things as well that really can be very, very challenging for people. But that lack of preparation and alcohol mixed together, yeah, that's a bit of a disaster.
A lethal cocktail.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah, you're talking about. I mean, really, what you've done is just transferred from one form of teaching to another. But at least the sort of pupils you have now, A, are probably more engaged because they're paying for it, and keen to learn. So that must be an interesting dynamic compared to working with, say, leaving cert students.
Yeah, it is. And I remember I was about 6 months into the business and it was International Women's Day and I was asked to deliver a talk to, there were 140 ladies. It was a beautiful event at the Curragh Racecourse in Kildare. And as I had a 40-minute slot and
Wow.
I
Mm.
looked down and I could see literally, it was a long, quite narrow room that was there. And I could see literally people were hanging on the edge of their seats listening to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is such a difference to trying to teach Pass Irish to Leaving Cert students who really don't want to be there. It was a
Sure.
whole different ball game. Yeah. So you have that side of things and you see immediate progress. You get that. I mean, we all like to know that we're making a difference. And quite often in teaching, it might be years later, a student come up and say, thanks so much for what you did. You're getting, that feedback much faster in this world.
That's fantastic. I
Yeah.
suppose in the 2.5 minutes we've left, tell me more, what next for you and where can people find out more about you and what you're imparting to them?
So what's next? I'm continuing to grow my business. To COVID has been great because it has allowed me to work internationally, like so many other, people who are
COVID
coaches.
being great, I think you have
So
to qualify that.
it has, from a business point of view.
Ah, that's okay.
Let's qualify that. Absolutely. Yeah. That it has allowed that world has got so much smaller. So from that
Yes.
point of view, it has been very good. And from my own point of view, it's developing the courses that I have. I've mentioned there the Master Your Pitch. I've got a 6-week Communicate with Confidence course, starts again in September. And I can be found across all social media. I share lots of tips and videos and blog posts and so on, always sharing lots of knowledge and information with regard to public speaking and presentation skills. And my website is softskillsuccess.ie.
Well, that's fantastic. We're delighted to hear that and every success with it. Um, I suppose with the sort of minute or so we've just left, are there any sort of tips you'd like to share with people that just may find themselves put in a position of having to give a speech or go to a networking event?
Always do your preparation beforehand. Take a few moments. It doesn't have to be, pen and paper and lots of planning, but just to stop and have a think. And I was talking about this yesterday, actually, as part of my own pitch at a networking event. Even if you're leaving a voice note, because a lot of people are leaving voice notes now, and I had a voice note that was 7 minutes and 30 seconds long, and if you have that on your phone, you're like, I'm not going to invest my time listening to that. So in any speaking situation, do your thinking beforehand, have brief preparation, and try to have a very clear basic beginning, middle, and end to what you're saying.
Great.